Thank you very much for your patience. We're ready to dive in. Our next great mind here at DC Week on the social good track is John Gosier. He's done some fantastic work. He has spoken at really wonderful storytelling venues, and he's going to continue our conversation about disruptive entrepreneurs, and he has some great tips, right? Welcome. No pressure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Hi, my name is John Gosier, co-founder of a company called MetaLayer, and the founder of a company called Africa. So I'm going to walk through a bit of my own work, and then I'm going to talk about disruptive technologies that are disrupting different industries, and then you guys can ask me questions if you want, or I'll keep rambling if you want me to do that. So, Africa is a company I started in East Africa in 2008. It's a tech firm that incubates young entrepreneurs. It provides skill sharing activities, provides investment. It allows them to work on high-tech projects and tries to build capacity there. We like to think that this type of company is disrupting sort of the aid industry, which traditionally goes to countries and hires consultants from all around the world, except from where they are, which is what they go there for, to build capacity, to create jobs and so forth. So they really appreciate us being there because they now have skills they can draw from locally. It saves them money, it builds jobs, it builds demand for more training and so forth. Those are a couple of the developers that I work with: Moses Mugisha and Ivan Kavuma and Emma Oluka. They work on all different types of projects. Great company. I did that for the past 3 years and just recently moved back from East Africa to here to DC to work on my new venture, which is MetaLayer. Before I talk about MetaLayer, the sort of hybrid, the intersect between what I do now and what I did before was in data visualization. So this is some market research that myself and the guys at Africa developed to talk about how fast how the landscape of internet infrastructure in East Africa is changing and across the continent. It's a little bit hard to see, but if you Google that phrase, Info State of Africa, you'll find it. You can dive in a little deeper. This is another visualization I made, the periodic table of internet world facts. Again, they're all kind of difficult to see from here, but hopefully you look that up and check it out. This one I really like. It's, if I can like my own work, this is the countries of Africa scaled, the domain names of African countries scaled to represent the population who are using the web. And so it's proportion of the population, not in sheer numbers, which is why a place like Morocco rivals Egypt's. But it's really interesting data that lies underneath. And so up at the top, there's a couple of links where you can go find out the stats for yourself if you are so inclined. And so MetaLayer is the new company. And so I wanted to work on a couple of different problems. One is making the tools for understanding and manipulating data more accessible to everyone. So we deal a lot with, or I deal in my various capacities a lot with groups that use data for some purpose. But there's sort of a large skills gap there to be able to process and manipulate data at a scale, or to create the type of visualizations that you may want to create. It requires a lot of training, some statistics, some visual skills that you may not have. And so we wanted to take all the work out of that, so there's the phrase data science. We want to take all the science out of data science and just make it very intuitive. We call ourselves the Photoshop of data. And this is what our dashboard looks like. And then this video, which will be running while I keep talking, will show you how we go about solving this. So you would say you want to tell a story with data. You want to take a look at Twitter and what they're saying about Occupy Wall Street. You would just drag down these modules. You can apply sentiment analysis and influence algorithms to it. Grab a pie chart and create a visualization that quickly. And let's say you want to do the same thing with another phrase. In this case, it's DC Week. So let's see what people are saying about DC Week. So I'm applying sentiment analysis to DC Week, right? Sentiment analysis, in case you don't know, means emotions. It's emotions for machines. How can you algorithmically tell whether something is positive, negative, favorable, unfavorable? And so here, in 30 seconds, we've got a visualization of the tone of conversation about DC Week. Neutral tends to trend positive, so that's overwhelmingly positive if you saw why it was so big. Some words are a bit, throw off the algorithm. Yeah, and so that's what MetaLayer does. And very quickly, I'm going to go through a couple of technologies that I think are disrupting various industries in both positive and negative ways. Some of these are related to my own work, and some of them aren't. I really love this book, The Innovator's Dilemma, where Clayton Christensen talks about disruption, and he talks about it as being technology that creates new value and disrupts other markets, right? And so, very simply, cause and effect. You create something new, and then there is an effect that can be positive or negative. So I'm going to skip through a bunch of these slides. This is from another presentation I gave, but predictive technologies are one area that's becoming incredibly lucrative and popular. So you see, I modified this quote from William Gibson: "The future is here. It's just not evenly distributed." I modified it and said, "The future is here, and you can buy it." And so what I'm talking about there is companies that offer predictive technologies as a service. If you go to Google right now and type in 2 or 3 letters, you'll get back some information where Google's trying to guess what you're going to type next. That's predictive technology. So it's the easiest way you can try that out, right? These are other companies that play in that space. Zillabyte, Palantir being a big one here in Virginia. There's a couple of others. And what's interesting about these companies is that they, particularly Recorded Futures, which is a new company that does this, is you can now use this type of technology to create visualizations, tell stories with data. You can use their platform, their skills as a service, which many organizations appreciate because they don't have that kind of capacity. This is a cool site where someone is using these types of technologies to predict who's going to win the XFactor. The XFactor is this big show from the UK, sort of like American Idol. And so this is from like 3 weeks ago. I have no idea who's in the lead, and they need a web designer, but that's beside the point. But where does this go wrong? So right now in Italy, there's a trial where 5 scientists are actually on trial for failing to successfully predict the future, right? They could not tell the public how impactful an earthquake was going to be, and now they're on trial for failing at that, for being bad at their jobs, which is, but aside from whether that's appropriate or not, it points towards a trend of these types of technologies going wrong and people being held accountable for using them, which is an interesting effect of this disruption, which we want to keep our eye on. It's very similar to the plot of the Minority Report, another William Gibson book. So the future of data is in these types of technologies. The future of extracting these technologies from everyday objects is sort of the next level of that. So extracting this type of information from everyday objects. So non-network devices, this chair, this room, the people in it, being able to visually extract information or somehow in other ways that don't require the device itself to be networked is where this is all heading. These are some words for this type of space. The Internet of Things being the most popular one, QR codes being the most practical one. You see those everywhere now. But that's what it's pointing towards. It's trying to get people and devices to leverage the things around them as opposed to the infrastructure between them. A very interesting example of that technology being applied while I was in East Africa is a company called Mobile Medic, which came out of Frontline SMS. Where they're actually trying to use iPhones with lenses attached to them to take pictures of someone's blood and diagnose diseases remotely and algorithmically. So the picture doesn't go to a doctor, it goes to a database and is matched against other pictures in that database, and that's used to diagnose the patient. This is what they're working towards. It's going to take some time for them to scale this, but just very interesting application of IoT technology. So being able to extract meaning from everyday objects, that's the trend, that's where we're headed. This also has some interesting other effects. This article is about actually encoding messages in your DNA. Which would allow people to share messages for future generations. I don't know, I just thought it was really cool that I could walk around with a letter for my grandchildren. In the area of diplomacy, we've seen a lot of positive and negative disruption. Most recently, Anonymous and WikiLeaks putting lots of pressure on governments to do things they want. An example of a positive disruption in this space would be a group I used to work with called Ushahidi, which allows activists, volunteers, service people to bypass the organizations that are traditionally allowing for service delivery. So during crisis events, as a volunteer community, you can now service countries who are in crisis quicker than some of the biggest organizations in the world, military, the US military, the State Department, and so on. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. What it forced these institutions to do is engage the public more frequently and more fully as a result.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you're enjoying your DC week, and pardon the interruption. We're about to get ready for our 11 o'clock sessions. Those of you currently in session, sorry for the interruption, you'll be needing to break in about 5 minutes. We have a keynote address about the future media trends by David Shing of AOL and the Black Box Theater. We also have mobile apps from smartphones to tablets and beyond. Also open source and open data sponsored by Phase 2 Technology in the ballroom. The new Ventures track is running with TechBuzz and a number of other fast talks. Startups for Good is a track in the Terrace Gallery. Enjoy your day. Pound DC Week. Have fun.
Another example of diplomacy sort of changing as a result of new technologies, new communication technologies. This is a competition I'm organizing for African app developers called Apps for Africa, which is actually sponsored by the State Department. So rather than reach out to, in the ways that this would have happened in the past, it would have been horribly inefficient, they would have worked with governments and so on. They just sponsored a competition in this case and allow app developers to solve climate change problems to win prizes. So they're encouraging this sort of grassroots innovation to be applied to specific problems relevant to local populations, and they don't really want anything in return. It's just a contest, which I think is pretty cool. That's the prize money. Education. These are some more interesting people who I met in East Africa. So this is, at the top, my friend Solomon King, who teaches advanced robotics in villages in the middle of Uganda. He's self-taught, learned everything that he knows from the internet, amazing person. This is a friend of mine, another friend, William Kumkwamba in the corner, who built windmills just by deconstructing the architecture from photographs. And the same thing in Nigeria, where someone built a helicopter because he thought it would be easier than trying to build a car. So anyway, I'm going to stop there, and you guys can ask me questions because I'm rambling now. Thanks.
Does the helicopter fly?
It does. It flies. It won't fly longer than like a minute. So it was more proof of concept for him. Sure. So Predictive Technologies. In this case, this talks about. So there's a blog post up on my blog called "To Redistribute the Future" that lists all of them out fully if you want to read it. But this one talks about education, like new technologies that are sort of flipping education on their head. Every single one of these people is self-taught in the middle of the African continent. And so I think it points to technologies like, or services like Khan Academy, Teach for America, people who are sort of rethinking how classrooms should work. Because in this case, they had no classroom, they had no tutors, all they had was the internet and remote learning technologies. And I've started to see this more and more across, at least in Africa. The other technologies, Internet of Things, what else? Oh, so looking at the cost of entry to some of these technologies is sort of widening. So we see the effects of that every day, especially here in DC. You can occupy everything now. The idea there being that you know, there's so much controlled by so few, and it's not really a technology, but it is the result of many disruptions. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Sorry for the commercial interruption.